Once again, I'm getting to that. Okay. So the first unit which you have, policy meaning, policy, public policy, what is the meanings and how it is important in public policy for the government and all these things you have. We'll start up this discussion so you will understand. Okay. So here I will discuss what is the meaning of a policy, public policy. In general language, policy is a something framework of that a public policy is denotes, it means that a state intervene in the matters of public life and citizens for making certain positive change in them. Okay, positive change in them in terms of making of a policy, such as that in order to protect their health, in order to protect their rights, in order to that in giving punishments to them, in order to keeping them in the law and orders and controlling everything that it shall comes under the making of a policy. It is a responsibility of the government to protect each and every individual. For that, government will intervene into the matters of life of every individual for making of a laws. So making of laws, this method and process can be denoted as a public policy. Public policy primarily and talks about and in terms of applied aspects of the government. For example, that a kind of how peoples need to and accomplish their needs, how they have to request it and everything. It's being a part and parcel of this and public policy. If you see the definition of the public policy according to Robert Eystone, okay, according to Robert Eystone, what is the meaning of public policy? He said that the connection of government unit to its environment is called public policy. What is it? Once again, I'm repeating. According to Robert Eystone, public policy means the connection of government until to its environment. Means the connection between people to government itself is called as a public policy in terms of Robert Eystone. Next one, Thomas R. Dye is a famous politician. In the political intellectual, is a scholar and thinker who defines the meaning of a public policy as public policy is whatever government chooses to do or not to do is called as a public policy. It's a very definition which I've given by, and Thomas R. Dye, who said that public policy is whatever government chooses to do or not to do is called it as a public policy. So here you need to understand very clearly that what the connection between people and the government can be denoted as a public policy, and the government whatever it chooses to do it or not to do it, means making of laws or do not make of laws, giving punishments or not giving punishment, it's all are comes under the purview of a public policy according to Robert Dye. It's a very good definitions which we mix to understand. And also the same term, Richard Rose, another and thinker in the political science, who uttered a definition about a public policy is that public policy is not a decision, it is a course or pattern of activity. It's not something that one should make it as a course, but it is a continuous process, and it is a kind of an thing which is always is needed to the people of a activity. Okay, it's based on activity. Say for example, suddenly all of a sudden something has happened where people needed a certain amount of and help from the government has to do it. So these kind of a thing which shall be treated as an innovative public policy according to this Richard Rose. Next one, if other definitions by Carl J. Frederick, what he said, public policy is a proposed course of action of a person, group, or government within a given environment, providing opportunities and obstacles which is the policy has proposed to utilize and overcome, and in an effort to reach a goal, realize an objective of a purpose. So something what people ask to the government in order to accomplishments of their demand, government has to work on that. That itself is called it as, what is that here? Public policy. Do you understand that? What is a public policy in the sense? Public policy is a something that, and what actually the people ask to the government, how when government is responding to that and they respect, that itself is called it as a, and that public policy. So all 3 to 4 definitions would become an important to understand the meaning of a public policy. In general language, what is public policy means? People's demand solution by the government. How government and worked on solution of the and problems of the people, that itself is considered as a public policy in terms of this and uh, definitions of certain people. Now which I would like to ask you the question is that please mute your mic those who join the meeting. Maroli, mute your mic. Okay. So here is that what you need to understand here is that public policy in a definitions which I've said it that. And next one, there are nature of public policies also. What is the nature of public policy? You need to understand here is that. Let me tell you the nature of public policy. What does it mean? You know that we shall now discuss the nature of the public policy as a discipline. Okay, 1 second. See that the nature of the public policy, if you could see that there are different discipline of public policies which will be there. Public policy, which is majorly which is giving on the grounds of people's demands, isn't it? Such as public policy is based upon the policy demands and claims made upon the public officials by other actors. Okay. And you know that Public policy is often analyzed in the light of the outputs of the public policy decision. Policy outputs are the real expressions of the public policies. In other words, policy outputs returns and what has in the fact that through the government. These outcomes related to how many people have been and benefited and how many are the losers, what are the general results and impact of it, and everything that we shall discuss as a part and parcel of this public policy. The nature of the public policies is something that we discuss, something which is related to how government makes a program, how people and which is in and receiving it, and how they are utilizing it, and all those things is comes under the purview of this. And the scope of public policy, if you could see, the term scope means an area of an activity, and how long this concept and a political policies works out, and how long it has in scope, and which area it is going to done it. So it is important to remember that a public policy emerged as an interdisciplinary area. Earlier, public policy as a branch of political science or public administration studied the laws made by the formal governmental structure. In the field of political science, three organs of the government, namely the executive, legislative, and judiciary, were regarded as the law making bodies. However, during 1950s, a distinction was drawn between a law and a policy. Law is a general term, while the policy is a specific word in the well-defined an area having implications to present and future generation. So there are different factors contributed for widening the scope of a public policy: advancement of science and technology, industrialization, urbanization, development, role of modern state, and increased emphasis on welfare activity of a state. All those things which it can comes under the purview of a nature of public policy. So, what is the public policy and stages? There are many stages which has been included in the process of policy making. The first one is in policy making, the step one. What it's done that here you need to understand the first stage, public policy progress in policy making. Public policy is a proposed course of an action dealing with the public demands in the problem. See, for example, in this one, the process begins on the grounds of demands and requests of the people here, and also at the same time it taken into the consideration. According to Gabriel A. Allman, the demands are converted into policies that involves factors like political socialization, interest aggregation, interest articulation, political communication, the input and convert the demands into outputs, which include and rule making and rule application and rule adjudication, which means, and the people one has to one has to and that in say the people who one has to and that request it, then upon that the government has to make the policy. In the first one, the government will identify the issue and identify the problem and how it has to work on. The second stage, the descriptions will takes place, that there will be a mode of discussions which takes place, and whether it is right or wrong and all of that. In a policy awareness is the third stage, in the fourth is policy execution, in the fifth stage policy regulation. All those things which will be takes place. And the types of public policies, if you could see: substantive public policy, regulatory public policy, distributive public policy will be there, redistributive public policy, value laden public policy, ideological, all these things is comes under the purview of that. And if you could see politics and policy, what are the relationship between them? Do we have in really the relations between the public policy as well as another thing in the sense space? Absolutely, it is. S. How? You know that what is politics? Politics is a something that in a state, affairs of state. Policy is a something that it is a demand of the people that it reaches to the government. It's a demand. Say, for example, if the midday meals that they required, and if the people are remain demanding to the government, that it So that is it. My voice is audible. Yes. So now, so here is in public policy, the relations, if you could say the politics and the policy. Politics is a something that it is state affairs. Okay, politics means is a something that is a state affairs. Policy is a something that and the people's and what their demands of should request it to the government. So there is a relation between them policy and the and public, because the policy should make for what state purposes. What is it politics here? You should understand that because of group of people who are here and everything, it will be comes under that. So as in the coined by David Easton, according to that and the meaning of a kind of a black box model, you know that another model to politics policy relationship feedback are the black box model coined by David Easton. According to this model, the remaining demands which have not been included in the decisions and the policies will again get fed back through the same process for the purpose of its conversion into decision. These two models establish clearly that the relationship between the politics and the policies in political system. You know that policies is something that the state will make up. If without an intervention of state, there is no chances of the making of policy. If policy has to be prepared, the state has to intervene into the matters of that. If there is no state existence, there is no policy making all this. So it's a kind of a good relations which have been defined in the block box model by David Easton. The block box model which says that and how the two are which is dependent each other. Without the existence of state, there is no possibility of policy making. Without an policy making, there is no existence of state. As that how the strong relations in the bond which is there, everything that it has discussed as a part of this, and um, black box model of David Easton. Okay, now when it comes to the point of that and another one, listen, if you could take it out, that small topic which I've said it. Next one, emergence of public policy as an academic discipline. And the intentions of the and sixth semester, I mean in the second topic in the first unit was that how public policy has emerged as academic discipline. Earlier it used to be studied as a branch of political science as well as to the public administration. Public policy it becomes an interdisciplinary of two social sciences. One is that public administration as well as to the political science. Then how it is created an importance to that and the policy is becomes an and separate domain of studies. Today in the many universities are offering the post. So here am how this is emergence as that. And because of that, and nowadays in every state, it is becomes a welfare state. Without an existence of and the state, and as well as without a relation between the policy, as I have said, there is no existence of a state. Do you understand my point? Similarly, which I would like to tell you here is that today every country is working on policy making. Okay. And every state has declared themselves as welfare state. During in the half of 20th century, if you could see that, and policy studies have been rapidly increasing in every university. Even and that after 1970s in every state, I mean every country look forward themselves as a development and developing in the future. Every country has made it as a goal to become an emerging country in the world as superpower country. So in keeping in view of that, in order to and making a people alert and to making them into the right way and all these things, it is helped out by policies itself, isn't it? So as in the welfare state, when it becomes an important here, and in keeping in view of that, definitely there is a need of to using of a public policy. Today, if you could see, India is the best example. How can we say that in India policies are it becomes an it is playing a very important role to determine the fate of every political system of a nation. You know that legislature, executive, and judiciary we have. Without a legislature, can you imagine the status of an executive and legislature? Nothing. Where there is no law preparation, there is no existence of executive. Okay, something should be prepared and something should be implemented. When you do not and make a law, there is no matter of to implementation of the policy. So, as in keeping in view of that, then to nowadays, public policy it is becoming increasing. It is its own in importance in terms of to doing it. So, hence, the relationship between the public policy and state it becomes a very very important in terms of it. So, this is was the second and the topic where you need to see that. Then there are approaches which it can be studied as a policy science. In this one, first one, behavioral approach. What does it mean, behavioral approach? Behavioral approach, also called as a socio-psychological approach. For your kind information that I'm telling, what is the another name of a behavioral approach? Another name of behavioral approach is socio-psychological approach. What does it mean? Socio-psychological approach is basically it concerned with the scientific study of human behavior in a diverse social setting. In the study of public policy, it is said that the conduct of administration is greatly influenced by human sentiments, perceptions, and environment in which administration operates. The behavioral approach does not focus on the matter of the policy as it is, but it looks as a secretarial structure within which policy creation takes place. It lays stress on the persons concerned in the making and administration of the policy. In other words, if a scrupulous policy or a set of policies are not adjusted, less effective than it had been and hoped, causes for the failure will almost positively to require the dealing with the middle of the personalities, isn't it? So, as behavioral approach, which is very, very important as being a part of a political science, system approach, how does it works to the policy making? You know that one thing, system approach, what it does, what it tells that, then I'll tell you here is see that. So policy making it is becomes a very important. If you could understand the policy as it's a part of the system approach, then I'll tell you a system approach. One second. One second.